It's Wednesday, January 11th. Welcome to this week's edition of CT Pulse on the HAN Network. I'm Kate Czaplinski.
And I'm Josh Fisher. Kate.
Josh, there's certainly been a lot going on nationally in the last few days, but we are going to focus mostly on Connecticut today.
We are. And if you just finished watching Donald Trump's wonderful press conference, thanks for stopping by to get a little closer look. We won't talk much, if at all, about that amazing 60 Minutes that went on this morning and into this afternoon. But we have the educational cost-sharing cuts to talk about today. Potential new sales tax increase that's being proposed. Our state comptroller says that the deficit might not be as bad as is thought, something we may have heard before. Senator Blumenthal questioning Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General nominee, and a lot more.
Yeah, a really great story, actually. The Hartford Courant did the reporting, and it was shared on the New York Post yesterday. But that 68 years after being dismissed, being dismissed from the U.S. Air Force because he was gay, an elderly veteran won his legal fight to upgrade his discharge status to honorable. So a really interesting story there. We'll tell you more about it a little bit later. Of course, Doug Smith will also join us later on with his editorial cartoons this week. Josh, but let's start with cuts to ECS grants, educational cost sharing. We talked a little bit about it last week because at the start of the year, municipalities were informed that there were going to be these mid-fiscal year cuts that were going to happen, and it took a lot of people by surprise. Just to kind of scroll through some of it, obviously the wealthier towns, a lot in our coverage area, are the ones getting the biggest cuts. Darien, they're $775,000 going down to just over $400,000. Greenwich's ECS grant was cut by just over 90%, from $1.4 million to just $137,000. That's the biggest cut across the board. New Canaan cut by about 50%, going down to $339,000. Wilton a cut of 30% for their ECS grant. Easton seeing a cut of 70%. And, you know, it just goes on, but the 68 poorest communities will lose much less. For example, Bridgeport's only losing 1% of their ECS grant. And closer to here in our Shelton studio, the Shelton School District, they are being cut by $275,000, Stratford $250,000, Trumbull $266,000, Milford a larger cut at $382,000, Josh.
Yeah, and it's hard to find a public official who is in favor of this,
right.
You know, particularly on the municipal level. It's one thing, too, for this to happen, to say next year you're going to get less, but for it to happen in the middle of the fiscal year when things have already been budgeted, that really can lead to some problems in some towns, particularly the ones that aren't managed as well.
So, yeah, it's interesting to note. So these ECS grants, they actually go to the town, and then the school board is able to build that money into their budget because the town can offset that amount. So you have New Canaan's first selectman, Rob Malazzi, kind of being, you know, he's like, we'll deal with it. We're going to mitigate this. He said, we'll look for various ways to mitigate the impact and fully anticipate the same effort from the town side as the Board of Education side when it comes to softening the impact of it. In Milford, you had James Riccatelli Jr., who's the Chief Operations Officer for the Board of Ed, said the news wasn't expected, but it wasn't a complete surprise either, considering state budget woes. He says since that money doesn't go directly to the school board, but rather to the city, that midterm cut's going to impact the city more strongly than the schools. He says that's a big hit to city revenue that they were expecting to come in. And of course, there's been a lot of state representatives and senators coming out in the aftermath. Around here, we have a lot of Republican representation, and they are really slamming these cuts. And Josh, CTN was at the Capitol last week after Governor Malloy's State of the State address and spoke to, got some sound bites from a few of the leaders in the legislature about their reaction to cuts to municipal funding. We're going to start with State Senate President Pro Tempore Martin Looney on the need to make cuts. Let's check it out.
Some years ago, we have to look for savings everywhere we possibly can, because with money as tight as it is, we can't assume the status quo. So there has to be, now I would support allowing the towns to raise some additional money on their own. I propose adding a little addition to the sales tax of 0.5% that the municipality.
Majority Leader Ritter from the great city of Hartford understands it, but really looking at the details and having an honest conversation on how it would be and how it would roll out is going to be the difficult task.
So is the devil in the details?
Always it.
I saw you.
We're not frozen.
That got cut strangely. But they also spoke with Republican House Minority Leader Themis Claridis. She had a bit more of a strong wording for those cuts. Let's check it out.
Talked about many times before. It is completely and utterly unfair and irresponsible to give cities and towns a cut in mid-budget. They just want to know what they're facing so they can budget responsibly. And what happened last week was shameful in a budgeting process, and they should be ashamed of themselves what they did. So if we can sit down and have a conversation about potential change of formula, I'm certainly open to that, but it would depend on what it would mean.
We spoke to town managers yesterday.
And she's right. It is shameful because this is something that could have been done either 6 months ago. I mean, we have a perpetual deficit, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later in the show. But or it could have been done. You could have said next year you're not going to get these cuts. But to cut it in the middle of the year, and granted, there's always that it's kind of a chicken or the egg thing. Kate, is where is it the Republican towns they were aimed because they vote Republican, or is it the more wealthy towns? Which just tend to vote Republican for the state elections, were they the ones who were cut because they're Republican or because they're wealthy?
Right.
But also, I think a lot of the constituents in those towns feel like they send so much money up to Hartford that is so poorly spent that it's unfair to take a little bit more away. And I think also, if you look at it, a lot of these towns are run better than certainly than Hartford does. The state capital as a whole. But you can look at it too and say that we need to save money somewhere in this state. We have continued deficits, and there has to be some point where we're going to have to actually balance the state budget without going into debt year after year.
Well, I remember years ago when I used to cover Ridgefield, I remember First Selectman Rudy Marconi saying, if we get cut to our state aid, hey, we don't get much to begin with, so we can figure it out. So that's the other part of it. A lot of these wealthier towns, they just don't receive as much. However, as we've discussed in the past, that money is always built into the budget, and doing it mid-year does cause a big issue. I know Darien State Representative Terry Wood, she called the cuts egregious and said that why isn't every child being equally funded? Why are there more cuts in different ways?
I mean, also what they have to do is they have to change the state law if they're going to cut what the share is, because by state law you're not allowed to reduce your education budget. It can only be an increase over the previous year. So if the state if that's a state law, this is kind of another sort of unfunded mandate. If you're going to cut money from the money from if the state is going to cut money out of your educational budget, you should allow the towns to keep to not have to fill it, because this means it has to come from the town side, which often means that some roads aren't going to get paved, or the town's not going to be able to hire someone that it needs to work. The money has to come from somewhere.
Oh. And I know, despite talking about the bad news, Josh, our state comptroller, Kevin Lembo, actually has a bit of an optimistic view for Connecticut.
Yes. Now, keep in mind, every year Kevin Lembo seems to have an optimistic view for the state of Connecticut, and it doesn't always seem to work out. But he spoke to the Hartford Rotary Club earlier this week, and Christopher Keating wrote this up for the Hartford Courant, and Lembo said that he is feeling pretty good at this point about the state budget. Right now, in the short term, Lembo said the numbers for the current fiscal year have improved as the deficit has dropped from only 56 million. It's dropped to 56 million from 80 million that was previously thought. The state's still waiting to find out how well Christmas sales went, but they feel like it went rather well, and that 6.35% tax increase generated more than $4 billion annually. It's right behind what the personal income tax, thank you, Lowell Weicker, what that produces for the state. So they said and also you may have noticed if you did any online shopping this year, you certainly got sales tax is in full swing on Amazon and everything, which it used to not be. Lembo is rather positive. He said that there's been improvement in consumer confidence. The stock market performance is certainly, as we see, it's breaking records at least once a week, it seems. And the economic stability of finally knowing who the president will be after a volatile campaign. That's what's tying in and making everything look positive. Yeah.
Oh, well, Josh, going back quickly to the ECS, one thing that I wanted to mention in that CTN video, a lot of people were talking about regionalizing school districts as coming up as a possible thing. in a way, as enrollment declines and we are an aging state and there's less young families moving in, which obviously the state wants to change.
Yeah.
But kind of interesting there. I see that as being a big, I know even regionalizing things like health departments and police departments has proven much more difficult than.
Well, Connecticut's a home rule state. We, unlike, and certainly when someone moves out here from the Midwest or the South, or the West Coast finds it weird that we don't have county government, and there isn't as much regionalization going on here. But a lot of people who are from Connecticut really enjoy that. If you live in Darien, you get to you get a lot of local control there.
Right.
You have your state mandates and everything, but you can choose what your school board, what the kids learn and what sort of books they get and all that. You have a lot of local control. But there's been some lawsuits lately challenging, saying particularly that the kids in Bridgeport don't get a good education, and is that fair? And there's certainly some to be reasonable.
Right.
I think
because budgets rely on property taxes, so the wealthier the town.
That's why and people aren't really moving to Bridgeport, and a big reason why is if housing is cheap there, but your taxes are outrageous.
Right.
So it's not really worth it, and then also the schools aren't good. So there's certainly bright spots here and there, but overall, you compare the Fairfield schools to the Bridgeport schools, and it's night and day.
It's just interesting. We always talk about regionalization. It's such a good idea in theory, but when we've watched it try to be rolled out in a lot of the towns we cover, it just doesn't go quite as smoothly.
Right. I think really, a better move would be for the state to require less of the towns, and because so much of the money. Particularly in Fairfield County, if you're in a wealthy town, that money goes up to Hartford, but then it gets funneled to the cities such as New Britain and Hartford, which really only could balance their budgets based on the taxpayers in the wealthier communities. So, and that's not necessarily a fair way to do it. I mean, this happens nationally too. Connecticut gets something like $1 back for every $2 that it sends down to Washington, D.C. But the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities has, Kate, they have an answer to this, and that's higher taxes.
Oh.
They want to increase the sales tax. They want to, so the sales tax to increase it to 6.85%. That's a 0.5% up. It's 6.35% now, but devote 1% to the cities and towns. I think it is a 0.5% right now that goes back to the cities and towns. But this is like the Connecticut way. It's, we're having trouble, we'll just raise taxes. And that has not worked out, over the course of the past, certainly 6 years, if not longer, going back to 1990 when the income tax was instituted. 91, Connecticut has continued to see a decrease in population. You note that we have fewer electoral votes every 20 years or so, and it just is not doing well. So raising taxes, all that does is just drive more people out of the state, I think, and help the poor.
We should say our friend of the show, State Senator Tony Wong, he wrote a piece that ran in some of our papers this week, and he's at least a little bit optimistic because, as he says,
Tony's
for the
always
first time in 125 years, there are an even number of Democrats and Republicans in Connecticut State Senate. He wants it to be a new era, more balanced legislature, represents good news for Connecticut taxpayers. So I guess we'll find out how that's going to go for us, Josh.
Yeah, we seem
keep
to say
talking
that
about
every
it.
year, Kate,
I know.
right around January. We'll find out, and it'd be nice. So, another, Kevin Lembo's has been talking, the state comptroller. If Malloy does not run for re-election, he'd throw his hat in the ring probably and be among the candidates to run.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Well, on that note, we are going to step out for a break. When we come back, we have a lot more state and local news to talk about coming up after this.
Well, there's still a bite out on the water. Most anglers have decided to stow the gear for the winter. Just because Mother Nature isn't cooperating doesn't mean you can't see the latest models of all your favorite gear. With 2 convenient locations, it couldn't be easier to get your fix of summer. Boater, beach bum, fisherman, or simply love the New England coast, this is a unique place to shop. The Dock Shop, 51 Tokenique Road, Darien, 609 Riverside Avenue, Westport, or on the web, dockshop.com.
It's all about meeting goals this year, and Trinity CrossFit of Ridgefield has experienced trainers, top-of-the-line equipment, and a newly renovated space to help get you there. Offering more classes per day than any other CrossFit gyms in the area, we cater to all fitness levels. Our coaches have a combined 10 years of experience in CrossFit, and as competitors themselves, Trinity coaches can get you ready for competition in 2017. Stop by our grand opening bash on Saturday, January 14th at 9 a.m. Visit our convenient location on Route 7, Danbury Road, or find out more more at trinitycrossfit.com. At In Sports Trumbull, the game is always on inside. Recently renovated and home to one of Connecticut's largest indoor turf fields, In Sports is a multi-sport recreation center providing state-of-the-art facilities for league play, camps, and youth programs. Sign up now for the In Sports New England Top 80 Lacrosse Showcase taking place on January 14th. Coaches from New England colleges will be scouting and coaching the recruits for the college class of 2019 and 2020. The top 40 players will be featured in All-Star Game to get maximum recruiting exposure. Spots will fill up fast, so go to insports.com for pricing and more information. Like and follow us on Facebook.
Want a new experience in car buying? No aggravation, no confrontation, just answers to all your questions. Scap Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram. Car buying the way you want it to be. With one of the largest selections of new 2- and 4-door Jeep Wranglers available, we are Connecticut's Wrangler headquarters. Located in Fairfield, Connecticut, we're easy to get to. Just 2.5 miles off the Merritt Parkway, exit 44 via Route 58 South. Save thousands right now during the Start Something New sales event, now through January 31st.
Discover a world of wellness in the heart of New Canaan. Halo Studios, New Canaan's first collaborative wellness center, offers you the freedom to choose from the best and latest health, fitness, and wellness options. Inside Halo Studios, you'll find all the wellness experts you need at places like Halo Fitness, Priority Wellness, and Sama Yoga Center. Come by for a free wellness assessment, open 7 days a week at 45 Grove Street. For more information, visit halostudios.com or call 203-594-9909.
If you're watching this broadcast, you're not alone. The HAN network is available for 200,000 Connecticut cable customers on the Frontier Network, and we've also reached 1.7 million viewers on our free live streaming sports, news, and entertainment broadcasts. To reach our rapidly growing audience, contact Advertising Director Jessica Murrin at 203-273-7312 or email jessica@han.network.
We're back on this week's edition of CT Pulse on the HAN Network. Kate Czaplinski with Josh Fisher. Josh, staying on state news, I know Trumbull's first selectman Tim Herbst had an editorial in the Hartford Courant, and the Courant actually wrote an editorial agreeing with him.
Yeah, they didn't come out directly. The headline, I'm sure Mr. Herbst was disappointed, wasn't Tim Herbst was right. They're saving that one. Yeah, it's about how terribly run the state is. Low-hanging fruit, no doubt. But pointed out, it talks about the education cost sharing, which we've dealt on. But Mr. Herbst did also send out a bunch of freedom of information requests to find out how legislators are padding their pensions, because in Connecticut, if you get reimbursed for your mileage, that counts as income that goes towards your pension. So, for example, Joe Crisco got billed over $100,000 over many years in reimbursement, because I guess in Connecticut you get paid to go to work. If you work in the state house.
Imagine if you're, depending on where you are in the state, that's a
right. It could be, it's certainly a hike. Now, if you remember, we talked about this a little bit last week because
the Twitter wars.
Yeah, Bob Duff, who's the Norwalk and Darien state senator, and Mr. Herbst got into a little Twitter thing. Herbst, Twitter tiff, and Herbst was calling him bro, and was using terms like BS and pissed and everything, very gubernatorial, and very Trump-like. Really, is what it was. But good for Tim, because the Hartford Courant, which many people always accuse of being left-leaning, came out and said it's time for legislators to stop padding their pensions. Crisco got $105,000 reimbursed. So that all goes, and he just lost re-election, so he should start getting a pension soon. But Connecticut lawmakers, this is back in 2011, USA Today did a study and noted that Connecticut lawmakers can increase their pension by up to 50% by including mileage reimbursements that add as much as $15,500 a year to their salaries. They're all part-time employees, quote unquote, which they really work a lot more than actually being part-time. But then the other question too is, all these people were asking Mr. Herbst, because he sent in these FOIs on Town of Trumbull letterhead, and if he was doing this, if this is actually work that should be done for the Town of Trumbull. Of course, Tim is mentioned often as a potential gubernatorial candidate. He got the most votes statewide of any Republican in the last state election. back
For state treasurer,
when he ran for state treasurer, narrowly lost to Denise Napier.
So yeah, I'm sure we'll be following him in the year to come. It's
We're all
gonna be
hoping.
interesting to see what
yeah,
happens.
I think this is kind of too a little bit. This is like the Hartford Courant's just trolling Tim, and they want him to run. They want to build him up. So just keep an eye on that, Tim. I know he watches the show regularly.
Well, switching gears, Senator Richard Blumenthal, according to the Connecticut Mirror, he actually provoked one of the liveliest exchanges in that day-long confirmation hearing of Senator Jeff Sessions, President-elect Donald Trump's choice for Attorney General, by pressing him on some of those controversial groups who have given him awards and who he's had links to, including the Federation for American Immigration Reform, whose founder, John Tanton, said he hoped the U.S. would keep a majority white population, and he's made other racially insensitive remarks. And Blumenthal asked Sessions why he would accept an award from that society where the leader has said things like that. Sessions said he did not agree with Tanton and didn't know if he had anything to do with the award. Blumenthal also questioning his relationship with David Horowitz, who's been praised by Sessions. So kind of interesting there.
Yeah,
Good for Blumenthal.
Yeah, well, it was. I watched a lot of that, and Blumenthal was very nice too, because he noted that they are friends. They served in the Senate together for I guess the past 6 years now, and that he did note that he said he's going to be tough on him, but maybe not as tough as Sessions would have been on Blumenthal if the role was reversed. So, and one of the other things he did ask, which Sessions did not answer, is if he, as he remains in the Senate, if he would recuse himself from voting on other cabinet positions that are up for nomination, which I thought was an interesting question.
How did he answer that?
He didn't answer. He kind of went around.
Went
around it. But this is the thing.
Yeah.
Sessions is likely going to be confirmed. It's rare that the body of the U.S. Senate would vote against one of its own. That does not happen often in a situation like this. And he's pretty well liked. Joe Lieberman came out in favor of him, which certainly also might be just Joe Lieberman trolling all the Democrats in Connecticut, which you always got to enjoy. Joe Lieberman said he never agreed with anything anyone's ever said, including himself.
Well, staying on U.S. Senator Richard Blumenthal, he was a big part of a push for this U.S. Air Force veteran whose discharge was undesirable back in March of 1948, apparently because he was gay. He's just recently, this is H. Edward Spires, 91 years old, of Norwalk, Connecticut. He learned last Friday that the Air Force Board for Correction of Military Records approved his application to eliminate the undesirable discharge that has stained his military service. The Hartford Courant reports that Spires and attorneys from the Yale Veterans Legal Service Clinics filed a lawsuit in November against the Air Force, citing the 2010 repeal of the military's Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy. That board ruling does not contain an apology, but it does cite sufficient evidence to demonstrate the existence of an injustice there. I mean, this is a really interesting story. The Hartford Courant doing the reporting. It was also shared on the New York Post. But Senator Richard Blumenthal has also championed Spires' fight, and he said the ruling corrects an incredible injustice. Among other benefits, veterans with a less honorable discharge are generally barred from having military honors at funeral services. Spires hopes to have a military funeral upon his death. Really interesting.
That's a great story
there. Very cool story. All right, Josh,
What else, Kate?
in more local news, we had Ridgefield Press editor Steve Coulter on a few weeks ago before the holidays to talk about Mountainside, which is kind of this elite drug rehabilitation facility. It would be a small facility, and it would take over this massive estate called Sunset Hall in Ridgefield. It would also be in a residential neighborhood. So they're looking for a zone change, and the backlash has been big.
Yeah.
Neighbors are not happy about it. Some worried about the kind of facility that it would be, despite being elite and having only a small amount of people there. Others saying it sets a dangerous precedent about development in neighborhoods. You can see this photo of a recent public hearing just last week. Only 11 speakers had a chance to talk. It was also followed by a presentation from the applicant, but that public hearing is now being continued to Tuesday, February 7th. It's also going to be at the middle school auditorium so they can fit everyone in there. But it became pretty hostile at certain points. The applicant was giving their presentation and someone just yelled out, "We don't want you here." So it's become very contentious there.
Which was the headline on the Ridgefield Press.
That was.
Right?
It was a great headline. Yeah, there's much more on that story at the ridgefieldpress.com, and I'm sure we'll be following up with Steve just to see what happens there, Josh. And, you know, our own forecaster, weather expert that he is, Frank Granito, on Coffee Break, did say there might be some snow this Saturday.
Past Saturday, right?
We just thought that since this past Saturday we had a storm, we should remind everyone that when it's snowing really hard, you know, you should try to stay off the roads. Let's check out this video that the state police posted. This is just incredible. What's incredible about this is that no one was seriously injured, but there was like over 20 cars, as you can see, a tanker, a couple of big trucks involved in this mess on I-91. No one injured there, but just unbelievable, really.
A bunch of people trying to get to Waterbury in a snowstorm.
Yeah. But we are going to step out for a break, and when we come back, Doug Smith joins us, and we're going to take a look at our editorial cartoons this week.
At the Milford Bank, we offer an extensive selection of lending products and services to meet virtually any need. Submit your application online in our Mortgage Web Center. Start to finish, you can apply for a loan in as little as 10 minutes. Our knowledgeable and helpful staff are available to meet with you at your convenience. To learn more about what we can do for you, stop by one of our Milford Bank offices or visit us at milfordbank.com. The Milford Bank, always there. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
Are you ready for winter? Ski and Sport has everything you need to be fully outfitted for the season. A family-owned and operated business with over 40 years of experience, Ski and Sport's 3 convenient locations in Fairfield County offer top-quality, high-fashion ski and winter wear. In addition to clothing for men, women, and children, we also offer seasonal rentals for the entire family. Stop by our stores on 1 Ethan Allen Highway in Ridgefield, 877 Post Road East in Westport, and at 110 Main Street in New Canaan, or visit us at skiandsport.net.
Want to reach new heights in your fitness and health goals? Find what you're looking for at Elevation Spin, Train, and TRX in Georgetown, Connecticut. Elevation Spin gives you purposeful spinning workouts inspired by the road. We encourage monitoring of heart rate and energy zones. Elevation also offers customized personal training with dedicated professionals passionate about helping you reach your goals. And let us motivate you to reach greater performance and functionality with TRX suspension training, using your own body weight for an incredible dynamic workout. Located at 4 Old Mill Road in Georgetown, call Elevation at 203-544-9503 or visit elevationspintraintrx.com for more.
I'm Frank Granito.
And I'm Donald Ng for the HAN Network.
Tune in to Nutmeg Sports Monday through Thursday, where we bring you all the top stories from Connecticut sports.
From highlights to player interviews and expert analysis, no one gets you closer to Connecticut's games than Nutmeg Sports.
Nutmeg Sports, now Monday through Thursday at 2 p.m. on the HAN Network.
Give your day a jumpstart with the latest news, sports, weather, and more on Coffee Break, live on the HAN Network, weekdays at 11 a.m. Connecticut news doesn't get any more local than on Coffee Break.
So I think Doug Smith is a very conflicted person because he is Gandalf the Grey, but drawing conclusions is Sauron. So what does that say about you, Doug?
I don't know. I was just saying, you shall not pass.
But you look great as a wizard. You really do.
Don't
you
even
really
need
do.
the pointy hat of the pointy head.
All right, so there's only a few cartoons this week, but
Yeah, it was kind of a slow week.
let's get into them. So this one's for the Weston Historical Society's exhibit, Memories of World War II.
Yeah,
Tell us about this
they have a
one.
nice exhibit over there. Some families have some memorabilia from their grandfathers and some stories highlighting World War II. So we wanted to get a word out about it.
That's awesome.
And so I just used a little V for Victory sign.
Very cool. I like that a lot. All right, and up next, of course, we've all been talking about droughts. Months of rain are needed to replenish those reservoirs.
Yep.
He's adapting.
Yeah, exactly.
The poor fish are having to adapt. That's
And I'm
how
sure
bad
some
it is out there,
creationists will
people.
take offense with that cartoon, but
And of course, we do love this one up next.
this was from last week. We
Yes.
mentioned we had the atheist sign there.
And
An angel was vandalizing
Exactly.
it, which I like the joke.
so
yes.
I did get some feedback on that, and I'll share it with you. I won't.
Please.
Everyone's entitled to their opinion, but the cartoon in the January 5th edition served none of these purposes of lampooning political stuff, but the message of the cartoon seems to be that the Shelton residents who do not believe in God are silly, slightly ridiculous creatures who shouldn't bother the police with accusations of vandalism. I'm not sure what the purpose of this cartoon is. It does not call attention to social injustice. In fact, it applauds it. It does not satirize authority. In fact, it implies that to rebel against authority is futile. It does not enjoin the public to a political cause. This cartoon does poke fun at anyone who expects to be able to express minority view without being criminally attacked and marginalized by society. I'm disappointed in the Shelton Herald editorial staff. Surely the bar can be set a little higher. Now, I guess they credit me with far too much.
Yeah, thinking. I don't think he thought that much
Because,
about it.
as I said, I'm not against the sign or for it. I just thought it'd be funny that being an atheiist sign, how silly would it be to have an angel
An
be the
angel.
one who defaced it?
And really, we should be setting the bar lower.
I guess so. 'Cause such lowbrow humor on my
Nowadays,
end.
that seems to be what we should be doing. Yeah, I think it was harmless. I think it was funny.
I guess I just read into this letter. It's like, wow, they credit me with way too much intelligence. I'm not Machiavellian enough to come up with these like little
Doug,
things.
I thought atheists were supposed to have a sense of humor too.
I guess so. So anyway, but
right.
I get a chuckle out of them anyway.
That's
so.
great.
We always like to hear the
great.
response you get to these cartoons. But just for the record, he just doesn't think that much about it, people. He's just,
I know.
Just
It's,
kidding. He's very smart. But all right. Well, Doug, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Doug.
as
Thank you.
always. We're going to wrap things up here on your coffee break. Of course, you can catch it on demand if you missed any of it. Oh, coffee break. CT Pulse. Sorry. All right. Why don't you end it, Josh?
Thank you for joining us on CT Pulse today. For Kate Czaplinski and Doug Smith, I'm Josh Fisher. Nutmeg Sports is up at 2 o'clock, and we have live hockey late tonight at 8 o'clock, girls hockey, Greenwich at New Canaan. We'll see you later.
All right.
Tomorrow.
I had to kick Josh twice under the table today.
Sorry, Tim.